Just say it, man. Don't make me ask 20 questions.
What is the point?
Get to the point.
Just say it already!
Welcome to the PodCram. You might be able to learn how to flex your spleen. Lend an ear to Dr. Melissa Ilardo on the Huberman Lab podcast.
Which got us looking at the dive reflex, or the mammalian dive reflex. So this is, if anyone, and again, I hesitate to tell people to do this, but if you hold your breath and put your face in a bowl full of cold water, your body responds as if you're diving. And what that means is that your heart rate slows down. Your blood vessels in your extremities constrict because, your fingers will be okay with a little bit less oxygen, but your brain really needs that oxygen. So it's keeping the blood central where you need it the most. And then your spleen contracts. And so the spleen certainly wasn't the first organ that I thought about when thinking about diving. But the spleen is a reservoir. I mean, the spleen does many things, but one of the things that it does is it's a reservoir for red blood cells that are carrying oxygen. And so through that contraction, those oxygen-rich red blood cells are now pushed into circulation, and you get an oxygen boost.
How significant is that oxygen boost?
It's about 10% in most of us.
That's pretty impressive.
Exactly. Yeah. It's enough to make a difference.
Yeah. By comparison, there are a lot of discussions online about, if you finish your exercise, resistance training or cardiovascular exercise with a brief sauna session, so going slightly hyperthermic, right? You have to hydrate, et cetera, but it actually works even better. As long as we're talking about dangerous practices, it works even better if you're slightly dehydrated. You get an overproduction of red blood cells in the subsequent days, and this is used for a performance-enhancing effect in elite athletes mainly. You have to, again, avoid dehydration, death, et cetera, but this is done, and someone will correct me, but the shift in available oxygen is in the low percentages, like 1 or 2%.
Okay.
So this is what people are fighting for using these kind of Baroque protocols. You're talking about a 10% increase in available oxygen through a contraction of the spleen. I didn't even know the spleen could contract.
Yeah, that's right.
Just when you put your face into colder than ambient temperature water.
Usually in lab protocols, we do it at about 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so quite a bit colder.
For how long?
Depends on how long you can hold your breath.
Oh, right.
So the extent to which, how long the contraction actually takes, I think we have room to learn more about that. But one thing that's slightly different from what you're talking about is that after you stop holding your breath, your spleen takes that oxygen back, essentially. So it refills with red blood cells, and that oxygen that extra boost is no longer in circulation.
So it's only during the breath hold.
That's right. Only when you need it the most.
Interesting. What an incredible adaptation of the human body.
Yeah.
What are some other functions of the spleen? This is the first time the spleen has ever been discussed on this podcast, I think.
Yeah.
We don't think about spleens too often.
Well, you can live without one, so it seems like how important could it be?
Right.
But,
for
diving,
this population,
yes.
It sounds like it might be critical. You'll tell us.
Exactly.
What are some other things that it does?
It's involved in the immune response to certain bacteria, actually, I'm trying to think of what else it does, but the main role is immunological.
One thing in anticipation of this episode, I did a little reading about it, and it gets very heavy neural innervation, which is interesting. We don't normally think about our peripheral organs besides our heart as getting a lot of neural innervation. Of course, the gut has neural innervation, et cetera,
Right.
but the spleen gets very heavy neural innervation, which makes me think that maybe there's the opportunity for more, perhaps even conscious control of the spleen. Does this population communicate about any sense that they can switch this thing on, or is this just all kind of unconscious genius related to their behavior?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's all unconscious. It's not something that they talk about, and most of them, when I was explaining what the spleen was, it wasn't something that they had ever thought about or experienced any kind of sensation in the area where the spleen is found. But who knows? I mean, it's encapsulated in smooth muscle, I think, the spleen, and that's what controls that contraction. So, maybe there could be some way to consciously contract your spleen. Our spleens contract when we exercise to a lesser extent. And this is why horses and apparently greyhounds, someone wrote to me after the study came out, have massive spleens, as do seals who do a lot of deep diving, but that makes a little more sense.
Interesting. Horses, I don't think about horses being underwater very often,
right.
or greyhounds for that matter.
Yeah.
I wonder if they incorporate breath holds as a way to deploy red blood cells.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, it's something in the kind of breath holding aspect of extreme bouts of exercise is also contributing to that contraction.
Like when one becomes a bit hypoxic because you just can't keep up with whatever exertion, like you just can't breathe in enough oxygen, dump enough carbon dioxide to keep up with your physical activity. Is there is that one of the conditions under which it sort of mimics a breath hold? Or do you need this cold? There seems to be something about the face being cold.
Yeah, there's it's stimulation of the vagal nerve that is in part triggering this response, which runs through your face, and so that's why the facial immersion is crucial to triggering the response. But there is, I think, a component of if you're just holding your breath where that also kind of triggers it. So, but yeah, it's really amazing to think that as mammals, this evolved sometime so long ago that it's even in mice. They've done a study where they actually trained mice to dive, and they could measure the mammalian dive reflex in mice.
Wild. Yeah, so you sort of answered my next question, which was, why do we have a dive reflex? I mean, we're not a harp seal.
Right.
And we're not a diving bird. Why do we have this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I don't think we really know.
Thanks for listening to this installment of The Podgram. I hope it contains something useful for you. If you enjoy these selections and are curious about the curator's own thoughts, you can check out my other podcast, Psychic Lube, where I share concise concepts meant to grease the intellectual gears and help get your creative juices flowing. Each episode is an ongoing collaborative project that welcomes listeners to expand or rebut its points by email or comment, the most interesting of which get incorporated through periodic re-recordings. As always, if you're intrigued by today's content, I encourage you to go listen to the full podcast in its original form directly from its creators so that their sponsors keep paying them to make stuff for us and nobody feels compelled to sue me for copyright infringement. Now, get off your phone and go do smart stuff. Have a productive day.